Hi, I'm Marissa with Amphibian Press, and this is the Amphibian Press Podcast. Today I'm talking to Linda R Spitzfaden about her book, her debut novel, The Other Side of Everything. So, how did you get the idea for The Other Side of Everything?
Oh, well, first of all, hi, Marissa. It's so nice of you to have me on your podcast. And I love what you guys are doing for the independent authors. It's a great, new, energetic, it's a very exciting time for publishing, for fiction and book publishing, because of the upsurge of independent voices in fiction. And, there's a lot of great established writers and many who we know every year or so we'll see a book from. But it's also really exciting to see something so new and so fresh, these energetic, new, and previously unheard voices. It's a time of great opportunity. And I really admire what Amphibian Press is doing to bring along, to support independent writers, not only your own writers, but other independent writers as well, such as me and, other women that I know.
Thank you. That's kind of our goal, is to help other people, so...
Yes. And what was your question? I sort of got sidetracked from it.
That's okay. I wondered where you got the idea for The Other Side of Everything.
The Other Side of Everything. Well, first of all, I can tell you a little bit about my own publishing history, which is that when I was growing up, I always thought I would write fiction, but I got sidetracked early on. What happened was I wrote a book which was based on my experiences as a young adult training dolphins in Florida. And I called it The Keys, and I sent it to my English professor at Middlebury, where I had graduated. And the professor, David Littlefield, his name was, loved the book so much that he sent it to Little Brown. And Little Brown liked it enough to turn it down, but also to send it back to me with the editing notes and basically a letter that said, "This is really good for a first attempt. Please come to us with your second attempt." And but that was a number of years ago, and I got sidetracked into doing other things. I started a business. I got into magazine publishing. I had daughters. I was raising my daughters. And I think when my oldest daughter was about 12, I noticed that I was going on a lot of business trips. And every time I went on a business trip, I asked my two oldest daughters, Ducielle and Amy, who would like to go on the trip with me. And Amy always raised her hand, and Ducielle never did. So I thought, I am taking Amy on all these business trips. We're having so much fun together. What can I do that Ducielle would like? Well, Ducielle is very introverted. And I thought, my daughter is 12. She's extremely introverted. She might enjoy a writer's getaway where she and I go to a cabin in the woods somewhere and we just spend our 2 or 3 days writing. And I really owe it to her or something because she's not coming on these other trips with me. So she liked the idea. She also invited Amy. So it was the three of us right from the first writer's getaway. But in those days, I was not writing. I was acting in a support role for Ducielle and Amy and, planning little fun side excursions and sometimes participating in their writing exercise. But they were very self-motivated right from the first day. And so, and then they started doing, when it became available, they started writing for NaNoWriMo, which is the National Novel Writers Month, where in 30 days you're supposed to write a complete novel. And one year, I think it was either 2011 or 2012, Ducielle asked me if I would write alongside them. So I said I would. And I was thinking, what did I want to write? The first novel is really, it's kind of a hard start because unless it's very autobiographical, which I think a lot of first novels, probably most first novels are, but if that's not going to be the case, how do you begin? Like, there's a world of things to write about. What's your genre going to be? Who's it going to be about? What's going to happen? And I thought, what would fascinate me? And I thought, what would fascinate me is an unreliable narrator. Someone who starts a book and you think something's going on, and you think it might be pretty cheery and pretty, maybe a little bit boring because it's humdrum and every day. As one of my reviewers said, maybe you might start with a plucky magazine publisher who's trying to keep her plucky publication alive in a world where it's hard to keep magazines alive, and go from there. But then gradually, little by little, you realize that the world that the narrator is showing you is not exactly what's going on. And I've had one or two people say to me, and I find this really satisfying. I've had one or two people say to me, I didn't realize what you were doing when you started out. I thought, okay, we've got an ice storm and we've got a monk or a bunch of monks. It's all very jolly. It's kind of sitcom-y. And they said it was a good way into the book before I realized there was something else going on. And I said to them, that's the journey I wanted my reader to take. I wanted my reader to begin believing this book was something and then discover later on it was something else, because that's the unreliable narrator. And since then, I've written quite a number of books, nothing published yet, but I've been playing with something like that every book. The first one was the unreliable narrator. The second one, I wanted to break the fourth wall and have a narrator from the future come swooping in and make comments as to what was going on. The third one, it was something else. But every one that I've done, I've realized that the thing I'm trying to do is always the most challenging part of telling the story, because you have to make it happen without interrupting the story or without, basically without breaking the reader's flow. You've got to still be telling an engaging story, no matter what else you're trying to do when you write the book.
That's interesting. So let's talk a little bit about the book and what happens. We know that we have Piper Hammond, who's a blogger, and I think you said she had a magazine. And then you said there's an ice storm. So
that's right. So Piper lives in this sort of gloriously shabby, faded glory home in the town of Riverboro, New Hampshire, which, just for everybody who lives in Peterborough, is very blatantly based on Peterborough. However, as with all fiction, it's not the town of Peterborough. I mean, there are differences in the way it's set up and obviously differences in who's there, but there's a lot of sort of Romana clef touches there, where in Peterborough we have a market called Roy's Market, and in Riverboro they have a market called King's Market. And so there's a number of things like that. Anyway, and the ice storm itself is extremely rooted in, it's based on, what was the year, Marissa? I'm sure you can.
2008.
2008, yes. The ice storm of 2008. Piper is publishing her magazine from this faded glory Victorian home, sort of perched on one of the bluffs above Riverboro, and an ice storm sets in. And as a result of the ice storm, 6 local, Piper calls them monks. They're really kind of yogis, the kind of people who meditate and do yoga postures and sort of hang around as a group, but they're really not monks. But Piper calls them monks, and she has fun playing with them, sort of poking fun at them in her blog. But they move into her house and sort of set up housekeeping. There are all 6 of them, and there's room for them. And from then on, Piper's life begins to change. At the same time, there's a local politician who has set up something called November Lies. November Lies is basically a challenge to everybody in his reading audience, and he's very popular throughout New Hampshire and New England, and even has a little bit of a national following. His name is Jacques Marquand, and November Lies is his challenge to his audience to create something, to invent something, whether it's a book or a play or a video game, or in the case of Piper's daughter, Molly, a costume party, a masquerade. And so Molly's getting started with the masquerade. The monks are all underfoot. The ice storm sets in and cuts off the power. And of course, we in Peterborough and throughout the region can remember going sometimes, in some cases, a couple of weeks without power that year. And it sort of unfolds from there.
I love the idea of writing about the ice storm, because it was such a huge thing that happened to us. And it would be an interesting way to kind of force characters together. I think that was part of, I was researching romance or something, and the main characters are supposed to be thrown together. And I always kind of liked the idea of an ice storm or a snowstorm.
I have to admit, when I started writing the book, and I don't want to sort of reveal too much about the twists and turns of it, but when I started writing the book, I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to try to write a book where all the action takes place inside one house, kind of like a play where all the action takes place right in that one scene on the stage and things start to happen. And I thought, yeah, you bring the people in and then you create something like an ice storm that throws them all together, and then you kind of see what happens. So that was another thing that kind of fascinated me a little when I was starting it. Like, what if this happened inside a house, everything?
So you said that you've written other books, but you haven't published anything yet. Are you working on something specifically now that might have a publication date coming?
I'm actually working on several books. The one that's closest to publishing is called Kings of Riverboro, and it's a prequel to The Other Side of Everything. One of the characters, not the main character from The Other Side of Everything, who's Piper Hammond, but another woman has written a memoir of her first time coming through Riverboro and what happened there. And that was a lot of fun because, given the fact that Piper is an unreliable narrator, some of the things we learn about this character is very different from what we've learned about her in The Other Side of Everything. And in the course of writing, so far I've written about I think it's 6 novels based in Riverboro, all in different, they all are in different stages of the rewriting and editing process. But I've realized that Piper might be a little bit of an extreme case, but all narrators are unreliable narrators. They all are, because they all have their own perspective. They all have their own take on things. And one of my editors will frequently say, no, Piper's not like this. She's like that. Or so-and-so, this is not like Silas, for example, at all. And I say, well, actually, this is Silas seen through a different lens, somebody else who perceives him in this way, whatever. So Kings of Riverboro is the one that's with my editor now. And I think it's kind of in the final rewrite. My editor he really likes to set a high bar. He doesn't want me just coming out with everything. So sometimes he pushes me even further than I really want to go in terms of editing and rewriting. But he's got this now, and he says it's reading pretty well. So we'll see. I'm hoping to come out with it this year.
Oh, that'll be great.
Yes, yes.
You have been working in publishing for a while now before your novel, and you mentioned that you got into magazine publishing, and I saw in your bio that you have partnered with Women's Media Foundation. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure, sure. In 1992, I think it was really a long time ago. I think it was 92. Um, another woman in publishing, Thea Selby, said to me, "Is there an association for women in publishing?" And as far as we could see, there wasn't. So we said, let's start one. And we were at a conference, and a senator from Colorado named Pat Schroeder, who really had a great interest in literacy. It was one of her things, was there. It was a magazine conference, and Pat Schroeder was there. And I had the opportunity to speak to Pat Schroeder, and I said, listen, would you be willing to be on our advisory board? And she said, I would. So we had a big name on our advisory board, and really on the strength of that, Pat never really had that much to do with the association after that, but on the strength of that, we got the major publishers in the country, Condé Nast, Hearst, Hachette. We got the major publishers, magazine publishers in the country, interested and involved. And that first year, we gave an award, the Exceptional Woman in Publishing Award, to Gloria Steinem, which, looking back, I'm like, what nerve. Here we were, some women who just decided to start an association for women in publishing, giving an award to Gloria Steinem. What did she need an award from us for? And when we had a luncheon with her, and this was actually a little bit later when it had finally occurred to me that that was kind of cheeky of us. And I said, Gloria, I am really kind of embarrassed that these magazine publishing upstarts just said, we're going to have an award and give it to Gloria Steinem. And she said she loved it. She loves it when she's like such an incredibly supportive person. She loves it when people, women like us just take it upon ourselves to do these kind of outrageous things. And so that was our start. And ever since then, every year, we've given an award in the eyes of the entire magazine publishing industry to a remarkable woman who's created amazing things in magazine publishing. And so now we're about 25 years old, and we're still doing it. And we partner with other industry associations. And over the years, we did discover the International Women in Media Foundation, and we started to partner with them on some things. And then, there's the Magazine and Books at Retail Association. Many of these associations have changed their names recently because the word magazine kind of went out in the beginning of the digital era, and then it kind of came back in again. So there's been a lot of changes in name and focus as digital becomes more and more a thing. But that has been one of the things I've been involved in all these years.
That's really cool. I love that you guys were just like, there isn't one, so let's do it. Like, that's so great.
Right, yes. I give Thea Selby so much credit for that because she always used to, and she still does, actually. She runs for public office out in the San Francisco Bay Area, and she's always had a real fresh, like, why not kind of approach to doing things.
That's great. Where can readers find your book?
Well, local readers can certainly find it in the Toadstool. It is and will be available in print in other bookstores. You can also buy it certainly on Amazon. And just within the past really few weeks, the Audible version has been published. It's narrated by my dear friend Grace Angela Henry. A Voice for All Reasons is her company. Before me, I'm so pleased and flattered to be in this company. Right before she did my book, she did Condoleezza Rice's book, Democracy. And that's available on Audible. And so is The Other Side of Everything. And she does an amazing job reading it. In fact, I've realized I prefer the audio version to the print version. She does some very amusing things. And for those of you who are going to listen to the audio version, I'll just say, listen for Jacques Marquand's blog. It's called Damn Lies. And she does a very amusing thing with the blog.
That's nice. I know a lot of authors kind of hesitate when it comes to audio because you have to hear your words out loud. And I think it's great that you liked it better that way.
I think for an independent publisher, it's important to get and for everybody, really, it's important to get a really high quality reader. And my friend Angela is one of the best. She's among the best, and she has a great studio. The equipment, obviously, is really important. And she's got a great studio. The sound quality is amazing. And her ability to do the different voices and just show who the character is just by the way they speak is really amazing.
So you have a website?
Yes. It's, I think it's www.lindarspitzfaden.com. And I also have a Facebook page, and I also have a page on Amazon. So yeah, there's a lot of ways to find me. I also have to admit, I go also by the name Linda Ruth. That's the R in Linda R Spitzfaden. But it's the name I've used for so many years in my magazine publishing capacity, which actually has a lot to do with marketing and business. And it just feels like a very different thing than the writer. So that's why I went with Linda R Spitzfaden for the writer.
That's important. Branding and all that. I think we covered everything.
Well, thank you so much, Marissa. I've really enjoyed spending this time with you.
Thank you.
And, yeah. Gosh, I feel like we've covered a lot of ground. Yeah, I have to say, and you can include this or not, but I am really honored to have raised such talented daughters. And Amy's first novel, Untold, was, I think, a really vibrant, strong, well-written novel. But her second novel, which is getting ready to come out, Fingerprinted Hearts, and thank you very much. She's really enjoying working with Amphibian Press on that. Fingerprinted Hearts is really a wonderful book, and I think it really showcases her talent. She's got a very effortless voice. It's a very different voice than mine. My voice tends to be kind of a literary sort of voice.
I'm Marissa Frosch, and this has been the Amphibian Press Podcast. Today I talked to Linda R Spitzfaden, and you can find her book, The Other Side of Everything, on Amazon and Audible and in bookstores, especially the local bookstore in Peterborough, New Hampshire, Toadstool.